Welcome to Side on the Court Side. My name is Zach, and the NFL Draft is officially in the books. It's completely done. So now I will have a plethora of post-draft review, some reactions, some grades, things of that nature. And first off, today's video, I'm doing my three biggest draft winners. I picked three teams who I think had the best draft and accomplished the most and filled their needs best. Without further ado, let's get straight into it. My first team, my number one winner in this draft, was the Cleveland Browns. They made 10 selections. Their first pick was Spencer Fano. They traded back with the Chiefs. The Chiefs traded up to number 6. They took Mansour Delane. The Browns acquired a couple of, I believe it was third round picks, slipped back to number 9. They took Spencer Fano, which is who they would have taken at 6, I believe. And so they were able to move back, still get the player they want, and gather up a couple extra picks, which I think is huge, especially in a draft class like this where there's less blue chip prospects at the top and more depth in those rounds 2 to 4. I think acquiring a few extra third round picks is great for a draft class like this. Fano specifically though, number 9, I think he fits with his Browns team pretty well. The main concern with him was his arm length. He had the shortest arms of any offensive lineman at the combine. As pro day, his arms were a little bit longer. Who knows what that's about. But regardless, I don't think that should be a major concern. Didn't affect his draft stock much at all, obviously, since he was still the first offensive lineman off the board, going before guys like Francis Mauigoa and Caden Proctor actually went a little bit higher than I thought he would. Fano goes the highest out of all of them and fills a very big need on the Browns' offensive line. And then the Browns' second first round pick of the night was Casey Concepcion at pick 24. I really like this pick. They had one of the worst wide receiver rooms in the league last year. A lot of drops, a lot of inconsistency, and I know some of that definitely falls on the quarterback play. They could not get consistent quarterback play at all season, no matter who was back there, whether that was Joe Flacco or Dylan Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders. But it is hard to succeed at quarterback when you have the receiving core that the Browns did last year. And so I think everybody benefits from a guy like Casey Concepcion at pick 24. Speedy guy, can make an impact in the return game, which I think is huge in today's NFL. They changed the kickoff, which makes returners much more prevalent in the league now. And so I think Concepcion could do a few different things, both on special teams and in his regular offensive role. And then the Browns, again in the second round at pick 39, took another wide receiver. This was one of my favorite picks of the whole draft, was Denzel Boston, all the way down at pick 39. Boston is a guy that I thought was going to be a first round pick. He's been mocked pretty consistently in the first round, late first, so he wasn't a highly rated pick as in like top 15, top 20. He was mostly in that like 25 to 30 range. So I was pretty surprised to still see him here at 39. I think the Browns were elated to get both Concepcion and Boston. I think that's a great haul for wide receivers for them. Boston, he's kind of like he's very different from Concepcion. They do two very different things. Excuse me. Concepcion, speedy guy, likely play in the slot more. Boston is the bigger outside, X receiver, that AJ Brown prototype, big, tall possession guy, can go up and get it. Not a lot of drops. Concepcion, some issues with drops. He kind of just claps at the ball rather than like catching it like with his hands really. But I think together with the both of them would work really well, especially with the young quarterback back there. Great pick for both of them. And then at 58, another fantastic pick. Like I said, the Browns are far and away my biggest winner of this draft. They got Emmanuel McNeil Warren all the way at pick 58. He almost slipped into the third round. McNeil Warren is one of my favorite players in this draft. I love Emmanuel McNeil Warren. Great size, great length. He's the safety from Toledo, for those of you who don't know. There's another guy I thought was going to be first round, late first round. I think in my final mock I had him at 19 or 20, which is a bit high than most other people had. Like I said, I'm very bullish on McNeil Warren. So I was surprised to see him at 58. I think this is a great pick. And I think that the Browns had a fantastic first four picks with Fano, Concepcion, Boston, and then McNeil Warren. I don't think it could have gotten any better for them personally. And then on round three, I picked 86. They had a bit of a gap. They had all those picks stacked in those first 58 picks. Bit of a break at pick 86 in round three. They went with Austin Barber, the Florida tackle. Great size, 6'7", 318 pounds. Huge size. He's definitely a tackle. I don't really see him playing many other places. They obviously took Fano at 9. Who knows if he plays tackle or guard? I think he's very versatile. Barber, I don't think is as versatile. I think he's definitely a tackle, especially with that type of size. His pass blocking is kind of up and down. I definitely don't think he's like a day one starter. He's a really good run blocker though. I like his run blocking. Where the pass block is kind of hit or miss. He had his moments that was really good and like okay, he looks like a great pass blocker, and then next play he gets beat pretty bad. And so I said up and down, not a bad pick at all, especially down at pick 86. And then they kept going at the offensive line with Parker Brailsford, the Alabama center. He's picked he was picked at 146 in round 5, so another big gap. Pretty experienced guy, 27 starts at Alabama. He started at Washington, followed his head coach Kalen DeBoer down to Alabama after he took the job after Nick Saban retired. He has good footwork, really good change of direction. I like Brailsford. He's another guy that had some of those ups and downs, kind of like Barber. That Florida State game, the first game of the year, was a pretty rough watch, as it was for pretty much everybody on that Alabama team for that game. But yeah, like a lot of these guys, you're into round 4, round 5, round 6. You're not really looking for starter level players. It would obviously be amazing if they flourished into that, but you're really just looking for some depth guys, some rotational guys. As we'll talk later about some of the other like DBs, only certain packages, certain nickel packages, you're really expecting them to be used. You're not expecting them to be every down guys. That's kind of I think that's kind of what you're getting with Parker Brailsford. I don't think he's going to be a day in day out starter, but a great depth piece in my opinion. And then at 149, the Browns took his college teammate Justin Jefferson, the Alabama linebacker, at pick 149, just 3 picks later. He's 6 foot even, 223. Great tackler. He was Bama's second leading tackler behind only his teammate Deontay Lawson, who we will talk about next spring. He had 79 tackles. Jefferson did. He's kind of a work in progress. Again, like round 5, you're not expecting anything crazy out of these guys. You're able to take a little bit of a risk more. Jefferson, I think, solid depth guy. A guy you can work into some packages. Later on down the season. And then the last pick I'll talk about with the Browns was Taylen Green, the Arkansas quarterback. Do the Browns really need another quarterback? I don't think so, and I don't think Taylen Green is going to come in there and really compete for a job. I mean, who knows with that quarterback room? Who knows who's going to come out of that? I think that's just an interesting pick to me. Considering the amount of quarterbacks that they already had. Taylen Green, super fast, super versatile. He ran a 4.36 40, which is the fastest 40 since Michael Vick in 2001, who ran a 4.33. Yeah, Green, a little bit of an interesting pick, but I don't hate it. I mean, all the way down to pick 182 in 6th round. It's okay to take a reach on a guy who has, great physical traits. Didn't always put it all together at Arkansas, but not a bad pick in my opinion. Moving on to our second team, I went with the Baltimore Ravens. They made 11 picks. I think they got some really good value here. So did the Browns, but the Ravens, they went Vega Ioane, 14, the Penn State guard. I think is the best offensive lineman period in this class. I think he's the most polished, I would say, like the most ready day one starter. I really like Vega Ioane. Offensive line 1 for me. I do think this was a huge need for the Ravens. That offensive line, mainly the interior was terrible. The guard play was absolutely awful, the worst in the league last year for the Ravens. And Linderbaum leaves in the offseason. He is with the Raiders now. So yeah, I went with Figgy Wane and the majority of my mock drafts, and he ended up landing there with the Ravens. I think this is a fantastic pick for them, exactly what they needed. And then at 45 in the second round, another really big steal in my opinion was Zion Young. Zion Young is one of my most underrated edge rushers in this class. He went at pick 45. I thought he had a chance to sneak into that late first round, early second. I think in my final mock draft, I had him mocked at 35 to the Raiders, I believe it was. And so I thought he was right on that cusp of getting into the late first round. You saw the Titans take Keldrick Falk at 30. I thought that was kind of like the ceiling of Zion Young's range. He slipped a little bit down to 45. Kind of reminded me of the Mike Green fall last year, who the Ravens took. I think this is like very similar. Mike Green he really blew up at the Senior Bowl, and he had a fantastic measurables and all that, much like Zion Young. Some character issues, which I don't think Zion Young has. I don't think that was really an issue with him. But he slipped down a little bit, and I think it was right around that 45, 44 range. Mike Green went, which is where Zion Young goes here. I think it's a great piece to have on the other side of that defensive line across from Trey Hendrickson. And then at 80, then with Jacoby Lane, which I thought was a pretty interesting pick. They went back to back receivers, Jacoby Lane and then Elijah Surratt at 115. Lane is huge. He's 6'4", 200. He can make all the contested catches. Being 6'4" gives you so many options. So much downfield ability. I think a lot of the time you see those big, tall receivers like that kind of struggle with route running. That's not the case with Lane. He's a very solid route runner. He definitely benefited from having Mekhi Lemon on the other side of him, both being at USC last year. But you really saw them both like equally produce. Not quite equally produce. Lemon definitely outproduced him. He won the Blitnikoff and all that. I think him at 20 was a huge steal for the Eagles too. But Lane, he played so well off of Lemon. I think that the Ravens are going to try and recreate that with Zay Flowers and have Zay Flowers be their Mekhi Lemon and let Jacoby Lane kind of play off of that. And yeah, the route running, like I said, does not suffer from being so big. He has great hands too. And so I really like Jacoby Lane. And then Elijah Surratt, like I said, the other wide receiver they took at 115. He's another really physical route runner. He's great versus man coverage. He had 15 touchdowns last year, which I believe was the most in Indiana. I don't think Omar Cooper had more than him. He started at JMU, followed Curt Cignetti to Indiana, just like that whole team last year, really. I think everybody transferred in there. So yeah, Elijah Surratt and Jacoby Lane back to back. Great help for Lamar. And then they went with Chandler Rivers at 162. This is one of the more interesting picks to me. Rivers is likely to play nickel. I think he lined up occasionally at nickel during his career at Duke. And I think that's going to be where he lands in the NFL due to his size. He's only 5'9", 185. Pretty similar size to D'Angelo Pons, who went at 50 to the Jets. I think he'll end up in the slot as well, that nickel spot. He has really good instincts, I believe. He definitely gets caught with his eyes in the backfield from time to time. He kind of gets caught sleeping. He's looking to make a play and then gets burned over the top. But, down at 162 in the fourth round, you can kind of reach on guys like that, especially because he's most likely only going to be playing in that nickel spot. He's not going to be a full-time starter, I don't believe. So that's totally fine. And then in the fifth round, they went with Josh Cuevas, the tight end from Alabama, and Adam Randall, the Clemson running back-to-back picks in round 5. I don't really have a lot on either of them. They were both great players in college. Cuevas was, at times, Bama's most reliable receiver, especially late in the season, especially with the struggles that Ryan Williams had. So Cuevas was really well. Adam Randall was a wide receiver, got moved to running back. He was kind of up and down throughout his college career. But, in round 5, I really don't hate either of those picks. Overall, I really like this class of the Ravens. Like I said, 11 picks, some really solid value with guys like Elijah Surratt, Chandler Rivers, and Zion Young. And I think Vega Ioane fills their need at the interior perfectly. So, our final team, our third team, I think had a great draft were the Las Vegas Raiders. They made 10 selections. Obviously, Fernando Mendoza was the first overall pick. They needed quarterback. They got a great quarterback. Mendoza has all the intangibles. He's like a great leader, great person. Very dedicated to football. I saw Mel Kiper compare his work ethic to Peyton Manning, which I think is a really good comparison for Mendoza. Doesn't have all the physical traits. People like Dan Orlovsky would argue he has no like elite traits. He just has a bunch of really good traits, which I don't think is an inherently bad thing. And you see great quarterbacks all the time. They don't have really any elite traits. You look at guys like Jared Goff, like he's a top 15, 16, top half of the league quarterback. What elite traits does Jared Goff really have? And he still has had plenty of success, has led a team to a Super Bowl. He led the Lions to the NFC Championship game. They've that trade with the Lions really set the Lions ahead. Like getting Jared Goff was such a huge step for them. And I think that's the type of player that Mendoza can be. I think he can be better than Goff, but I think if he ends up just being, a Jared Goff level quarterback, I think that's a win for the Raiders here because they have been so desperately needing quarterback play. They have not gotten it at all for a few years now. And so if Mendoza can flourish into a top half of the league quarterback at least, I think they'll be plenty fine, especially with that core around him. The guys like Ashton Genty and Brock Bowers and whatnot. So then their second round pick, they traded back a little bit to pick 38. I believe that trade was with the Texans, if I'm not mistaken. And they took Traden Stukes, the corner slash safety. I think he'll be a nickel corner for the Raiders based on their scheme. Very fast. He ran a 4.33 40 at the combine. He's 6 foot 190. He doesn't have crazy size, which I think will kind of lead towards him playing in the nickel a little bit more. He's a great ball hawk. You know, I really do like his ball hawking abilities, his ability to read the quarterback. But I don't know if I really see him being an outside corner. It wouldn't shock me if he played on the outside, but I think he's better suited in the nickel or like in a safety type of scheme, which I think is where the Raiders are going to put him, which is why I do like this pick. This was another team that was drafting him to be an outside corner and they put him on an island. I would be a little bit more hesitant, but I do like what I think the Raiders could do with him. So I do like this pick at 38. And then down at pick 67, they went with Kieran Crawford, the Auburn edge. I was watching Keldrick Falk tape, and, Falk was a first round pick. I do really like Keldrick Falk. But not every time, but a lot of times, I'm watching for 15 and you just see Kieran Crawford all over the place. He's a really good run stuffer. I like his run stuffing ability. And he's also a pretty good pass rusher. He's definitely not on the level of his teammate Keldrick Falk, but he's definitely not bad at all, and he's able to alleviate some of that pass rush pressure off of Maxx Crosby. Crosby really being the only edge rusher over there. He's obviously a great player. Max doesn't need somebody on the other side of him, but it would definitely help, and I think Kieran Crawford can be that. He's 6'4", 250. He had 5 sacks and he had a pressure rate of 17%, which was really high. I believe that was top 15 in the country, 16th, I believe it was. So yeah, I really like Kieran Crawford here at 67. I think it's good value. And then at 91, they went with Trey Zune, the Texas A&M, offensive lineman. He really can play anywhere on the line. I wouldn't be surprised if he played center, guard, or tackle. I don't think he's going to play center right away because they just gave Tyler Linderbaum a record-breaking contract, huge contract. So I don't think he'll play center. He played tackle through most of his college career. He is a 4-year starter. He has tons and tons of experience. He played tackle through most of his career. And then A&M stuck him at center a bit this past year in 2025, and he played well. But then when the Raiders drafted him, they announced him as a guard, and so it looks as if they're going to stick him at guard. But if something were to happen to Linderbaum, I think he can move into center, or if they need him outside a tackle, I think he could kick out the tackle as well. He is 6'6", 312, really good size. So I think he could play wherever they need him to be, but I would definitely lean guard. And then with the first pick of round 4, the historic, I believe, Jermod McCoy slide finally came to an end. That first pick of day 3. I mean, I had the feeling McCoy is going to fall. In my last mock draft, I made it on the Monday before the draft, and I had him at 20 or 16. And I was definitely hesitant to do it, but I thought, like, no way he really slips past, like, the Browns at 24. But he fell much, much further than that. And as the draft kind of got closer and it got to, like, Wednesday, Thursday, I was like, okay, I definitely would be surprised if he went in that top 16 range like I had him. And then, like, I still thought he'd be a round 2 pick at the latest. I did not see him falling all the way down to the 4th round at all. But it's just really makes you wonder what those medicals look like, because that's the only reason he would fall this far. Because without that, I truly think he's the number 1 corner in this class, better than Mansour Deline, who went 6th overall to the Chiefs, and McCoy went at 101. So I was shocked at how far he fell. I thought if he's gonna slide, it would be, mid to late 2nd round, kind of similar to Will Johnson last year. He fell to pick 46. I thought that's kind of the range McCoy would fall to. I did not envision 101. So I think, I mean, all the way down the 4th round, it is absolutely worth the risk of Jermod McCoy. Whether that he needs another procedure and misses part of to all of this year, I think it's worth it. At this far down, it is absolutely okay to take a risk on a guy like Jermod McCoy, who has so much talent, but it's really just a matter of health. And a guy here at 122 was my RB3. He also slid down a little bit. He went to pick 122's Mike Washington, the running back from Arkansas. He had the fastest 40 of any running back at the combine. He ran a 4.33. He only had 1 fumble. It was a devastating fumble, a crushing fumble at the 1-yard line in the 4th quarter against Memphis, and again that they lost by 3 points. And so it was a heartbreaking fumble, but that was the only fumble that he lost all season. I think the reason he fell down as far is he has pretty weak pass pro. If you're going to be, an every down back, or a feature back in the league, you need to be able to pass protect. And I think that's one of the reasons that a guy like Trevian Henderson didn't play that much at the beginning of the season this year, was his pass pro wasn't where it needed to be, which is honestly shocking because in college he was the best pass blocking running back in that draft class, like by far. But it didn't translate to the NFL for whatever reason at the beginning, and you saw his carries get cut because you couldn't be trusted to be on the field in passing situations. And so I think that's definitely part of why Mike Washington slipped down this far. But I mean, he has home run hit potential anytime he touches the ball with a 40 like that, a 4.33 40. He can hit it from anywhere. He has good burst. The pass pro is weak. He needs a little bit of work at the goal line. He had the goal line fumble against Memphis earlier in the year. He had other instances where he never fumbled again, but he kind of gets stuffed like in there in the red zone, especially when it got down like inside the 5, inside the 3. So could definitely use some work on that. But down here in the 4th round, pick 122, really solid value for a guy I thought was going to go round 3. So I don't hate that pick at all. And the last pick I'll talk about here was Malik Benson, the Oregon wide receiver. You saw him; he had really good production at Oregon, 719 yards, 6 touchdowns, in a pretty crowded room. It's not the most talented wide receiver room ever out there, but it's really even. Like there were a bunch of guys with 500 yards, 600 yards, 700 yards. And so being able to produce in a room that's that spread out, I think is very valuable. And I can definitely see him getting on the field here for the Raiders this year. And I can see him making a difference in the return game. Another guy, similar to Concepcion, can really make a difference returning punts and kicks. So yeah, pretty solid gadget guy at pick 195 in the 6th round. Solid pick there. So that is it. Those are my 3 biggest winners of this draft: the Cleveland Browns, the Baltimore Ravens, and the Las Vegas Raiders. Let me know what you think in the comments. Who are your biggest winners? I will have another video probably later this week with my 3 biggest losers. Bit of a different pace from this one. And I do think I'll have some NBA content either tomorrow or Thursday, recapping some of these series that are starting to wrap up. And so be on the lookout for that. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like, comment, subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you later.